So, what other differences do we have? So, when it's built in this way, in this manner, there's other things that we also have to consider. So if I go in here, and I'm just going to make sure that the tool is properly reset, I'm going to go ahead and start, say, drawing a spine or a tail or something like that. And I'm going to go to my components and make sure that question mark is turned on. We take a look at this, and you notice that the Y direction is pointing at the back here, but the forward over here, and then the back again. Is this a problem? And if it is, why is it a problem? Well, in Maya, if I grab all these guys, way up there, and I go into rotation mode is by default the same as you would expect from additive. So inside of Softimage, when you use additive, everything kind of adds together and moves. But we're not getting a curling over. So if this was a character's spine, we would want them to bend over, and we're not getting that. We're getting this weird crumpling effect that's happening because some of them are rotating forwards and some of them are rotating backwards. So if I want this to work differently, I need to fix this. Of course, I can take these things and I could rotate them by eye to the other side. I could take that information and make instead a script for this. So rotate -R-OS, and then I've just done 180, which is my X, 0 in the Y, 0 in the Z, and then end with a semicolon. I've just dumped it up here in my shelf. And I could grab these guys and flip them to the other side. And grab those, rotate it, and you'll see that it rotates all in the same direction in cooperation. So we can repair that stuff, of course, fairly easily after the fact, but we could also just change the way in which we draw them. So I'm just switching to my secondary axis world orientation to change the behavior for calculating the up vector. So you can see now they're all pointing out the back automatically. I don't have to change anything. I still have my X pointing along the main axis, and it's so much better. So why isn't this default? Well, it actually only functions in that one axis. So if I were to go ahead and change my axis, and check that out, you notice that I'm getting the forward and backward behavior again. And of course, if I switch this to this guy, which is back to the normal response, and I look at that one, you notice everything is facing the right direction. So it really depends the direction in which you wish to draw these things, which will determine how that responds and what would be the most appropriate selection for you. Now, other reasons why this information is important has to do with use of IK. So when I draw this in a straight view here, I'll show where I am. There we go. And this has IK on it. Of course, IK is pointing straight exactly forwards. And if I want to use a IK that has rotation plane, so just make sure that I'm in rotation plane here, create myself a locator. Just going to hold down V and middle mouse button to snap it to here. Pull that out the front. Choose that as the master object, this is a slave object, and go to constraint, pull vector. I get the control and nothing snaps or moves, which is the response that you want. You'll also notice that a main difference in terms of Maya is that in Softimage, typically the chain up vector will be behind the object, whereas we've got this in front. Now, I'm going to just, actually I'll eliminate the whole thing here, and I'm going to cheat a moment. Let's create a CV curve tool, make sure it's linear, just draw 3 points randomly, and I'm just going to move them. So let's say for some reason that was my basic angle for the bone that I wanted to do, and I wanted to draw it in the 3D view. I can go here and V to snap to point. Of course, without the points visible, it's not going to snap to anything, so I'm just going to make sure that they're visible. So NURBS CVs. Now my snap to point will work, so holding down V as in Victor, click, 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 I get that response, and there's my little setup there. I'll just delete the curve because it's no longer useful. And I look at these guys, you notice that the orientation is a little bit weird. It's not angling along the bone itself. And the only thing that really points along the bone is the X, but these orientations are a little bit weird and quirky and off. So if I wanted to go and set up IK on this, just create a locator here. In this case, instead of snapping it, I'm just going to parent it. So child parent, press P. I'm going to zero out its values to lock it into location. And I'll just unparent it. And you'll note that the axes that I have at my disposal here do not bring it exactly in front of that. It's slightly off, which is unfortunate because when I try and do my chain up vector now, pull vector, you notice that it just jumped, which is not the response that I want. So now my life has been made just that little bit more difficult in order to make this work. So now I have to get funky and creative, and I'm just going to go ahead and say master, master, slave, constraint, just make sure that this is set up correctly, point, that's going to do that. Choose this as the master, this is the slave, constraint, set that, let's say aim, I'm just going to point at least one axis towards it. And then I'm just going to grab its 2 constraints and delete those. And now I can take that, pull that in front of it, constraint, pull vector, and it doesn't jump. So now I've got that in play there. But there's other ways of attacking this issue. We've got some tools to reorient these things and make this work for us. So let's look at a different way of tackling this. I'm just going to create a plane here. Doesn't need a whole lot of divisions. I'll make it a little bit larger just for fun. And I would rotate this to the angle that would basically blend between where I want my bone to be drawn. So it would cut halfway through a leg or an arm or something like that, basically orienting to the plane on which I wish to draw this. So I'm going to take that guy and I'm going to make it a live object. I'll go to my animation here. You can also find under skeleton joint tools there as well. And I'm going to draw this joint, and because it's live, it'll allow me to draw directly on it. And of course I would then use my other geometry as a point of view, and it draws right through the middle, so it would perfectly align itself there. So it's similar in the method to the drawing to the individual points. Then going to make it no longer live, make that a child, and I can press S to set a key on this object, rotate it back to 0, which flattens this, but I've got that information stored. And I can go ahead and orient the joint, reorient the joint in this case, just using the default values, which are the way in which it was just built. Wiggle my timeline to snap it back there, unparent it, and delete my drawing plane. What's happened here is all of this has been reoriented to work there. If I go ahead and look at its orientation, you notice that one axis points straight down through and one point straight out. So that makes life a little bit easier when we want to set up our IK. This is just one of many ways of doing this. There's all sorts of different solutions to this. I'm going to go ahead and create that locator. Child parent, press P. Zero it off. Just unparent that and make sure to move it along the appropriate axes. There we go. So there it is out in front. And master, slave, constraint, pull vector, and there's no popping. So that's another method of doing that. Now, when you're setting up to build these guys for IK, and let's say this was a hip joint or a shoulder joint, and you drew it instead of either one of those two methods, you decided to draw it in one of the other views. So actually, let's just do that. We'll go to a side view here. And it was close enough to there, but it's just one of those things, it's just a little bit off. But I draw it here instead, get it aligned to whatever I want. And of course, it's going to be in the center. It would have to be moved over to where that hip was. Maybe there's a subtle rotation here and here, something like that. And we get all that orientation. You notice that I did that all from the hip. I didn't go ahead and grab these things and start physically moving them around. You can move this guy, but you can't move either one of these because that will break the orientation in there and run into the same kind of issues that you had before, where you won't have an easy way of predicting where it's going to bend from. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to stop this particular video right here, and we'll move on into joints 2 to show you more about some of these features.